So Ravens flock, day 2 of OTAs has concluded. There's a lot more to be excited about today. We got a lot more footage today. We seen, apparently, according to the reporters that were there, they're saying that this was one of the highest attendance rates that they've seen at an OTAs in quite some time. So I'm gonna just interpret that as if the team is hungrier than ever. They aren't satisfied with how last year ended, and they want to get back on the field and lock in as soon as possible, and they have done that so far. We saw some rookies, of course. We saw a little bit of Malachi Starks and Mike Green running a few drills. We also saw some second-year players, specifically TJ Tampa, a guy who I mentioned in my last video, who I wanted to see more of, who I wanted to hear more of. I kept saying that I wanted to hear more about TJ because with the departure of Brandon Stevens, I do think that leaves a lot of available snaps for one of these other cornerbacks to step in and make a difference. I know we signed Chidobe Awuzie. However, I would prefer if TJ Tampa, because I would prefer that he take advantage of this opportunity and fight like his life depends on it to take a spot, not just earn, but to take a starting spot or a spot where he's going to get consistent snaps and be a reliable rotational piece to the defense. We also got several press conferences, one from Isaiah Likely, where he mostly was speaking about a softball game that he's going to be hosting that's coming up in the near future. Not just one in Baltimore, but he also talks about a camp that he does in the Massachusetts area, because he's from like the Boston area, I think Cambridge or something like that. We also got John Harbaugh. He also spoke out about several things. He mentioned that there's going to be a competition at the kicker position. I hope that's not too much of a competition because we drafted Tyler Loop. So I'm assuming that Tyler Loop, this is more so just an opportunity for him to just be more motivated and lock in and make the coaches feel 1,000%, not just 100%, but 1,000% sure that he's ready to come in and at the very least be a reliable kicker. We don't need him to be an all-pro just yet. But then he also mentioned something that was really interesting to me, was John Harbaugh, when he talked about our Darius Washington. He also said that it was his Achilles tear was like a clean tear, which I don't know much about tearing an Achilles, but apparently that's supposed to be the more ideal scenario out of the most ideal scenario you could possibly have when tearing an Achilles, just as far as you're supposed to have an easier time rehabbing it. He's claiming that they're expecting Ardarius to be back by December. I'm not gonna hold my breath on that. That's, to me, that feels like pushing it a lot. I'm not saying it's impossible, because it's been like, what, I think it's been like 2 or 3 or 4 weeks since Ardarius tore his Achilles. So I mean, from then to December, that's like 6 months. I guess in theory it's possible, but I'm not gonna hold my breath on it. Even if he did come back that quickly from an Achilles, I don't know if he would be nearly as effective. But what time will tell when it comes to that. They also asked John Harbaugh about DeAndre Hopkins, and they asked him what do they expect DeAndre Hopkins' role to be, and he was very straightforward with his answer. He says that they want D-Hop to be that big body contested catch receiver. Now I think D-Hop's only about 6 feet or 6'1", but still he's a dude with a long wingspan and big hands, obviously, and he's always excelled at contested catches throughout his career. So hopefully he can provide that for us. It's still yet to be determined if D-Hop still has a good amount of prime D-Hop left in the tank. We're not going to find out until it's time to get him on the field. I'm very interested to see how often he gets on the field, because most likely you would expect him to be wide receiver 3, but Nelson Agholor last year was wide receiver 3 and he really wasn't on the field much. But obviously DeAndre Hopkins, even if he's on the decline, he's much better than Nelson Agholor. No offense to Nelly, but I want to see how that works out, especially in the red zone. We have a lot of guys who are pretty solid in the red zone. Isaiah Likely is very good at contested catches in the red zone. Rashad Bateman, he doesn't do a whole lot of contested catches. He's capable of it, but he doesn't really do that much. But he is somebody who is a big threat in the red zone. But with the addition of D-Hop, if D-Hop still has enough left in the tank, I'm excited to see how much of an impact that has in the season, especially once we get into those clutch situations where we just need somebody who can just go, climb the invisible stairs and just snatch that ball out of the air. John Harbaugh also mentioned Odafe Oweh and how proud he was of Oweh for the work Oweh's been putting in the offseason. And Oweh's another person who spoke at a press conference. And apparently, Odafe Oweh has put on about more or less 15 to 20 pounds. So now he's up to 265 pounds, more or less. And according to him, he's saying that he's still as fast as he was previously, which understandably so was a big concern. He was wondering if it might slow him down. According to him, he's saying it hasn't so far, but he has alleged. Well, according to him, he's saying that he's also gotten a lot more powerful, which makes sense, of course. If you put on 20 pounds of muscle, you should be more powerful. I did like the fact that he mentioned that he made this decision as soon as the game with Buffalo ended. In his own words, he says that he felt like he was stripped of at least 3 sack opportunities in the course of the year, which I can understand. That of course you don't want those missed opportunities, especially when you're coming up on a contract year. So I'm excited to see how motivated he is to get out there. Also, Mark Andrews spoke at the press conference. He touched on a lot of things. He talked about how inspired he was from Derrick Henry, which I think all of us are, not just the Ravens players, but even as fans, even as regular people. Whenever you see somebody with that much discipline and dedication and that strong of a work ethic, it's always inspiring. Like, that inspired me, to be honest with you. But one thing that Mark also talked about, and I'm pretty sure this is the first time he's talked on camera about the game he had against Buffalo in the playoffs, and he gave a pretty reasonable answer, just basically saying it was a frustrating feeling, and he was pissed off, and he's gonna use it as motivation. I wish he would have given this answer the same night, because again, my biggest issue, on top of the events that happened in the first place, my biggest issue was Mark the fact that Mark, after having that disaster take place, the fact that he went into hiding, I did not like that at all. That did not sit well with me. You know that your teammates, especially your quarterback, they're going to take a lot of heat for this. You have a captain patch on. You were given the title of one of the captains of this team. Mind you, we up until last year, we were never a team that did that whole captain patch thing. It's like they gave you the honor of being one of those captains, and to me that didn't feel like a move that somebody who truly was a leader would make, and I was very disappointed by that. And ironically enough, the answer he gave now, I feel like if he had just given that answer that same night, I feel like most people could have moved on easier. And he also gave an answer a few weeks ago. It was on like a written interview for like either a magazine or a blog or something, and I didn't really care too much for that answer because he also blamed it on like wet gloves, and I don't want to hear all that, man. Just say that you were pissed off that it happened. You're gonna use it as motivation. So I can't say too much else about it other than he's still on the team. So I'm gonna be interested to see how the snaps get split up between him likely and Charlie Kolar, as well as now D-Hop being brought into the mix. But let me know, was there anything that you were excited about from day 2 of OTAs? Was there anything that Isaiah Likely, John Harbaugh, Mark Andrews, and Odafe Oweh said in their press conferences that caught your attention? And do you think it is possible for Ardarius Washington to come back by December?